The year was 2147, and Earth was dying. Scientists had discovered the terrible truth 3 years ago. The sun was sick. Something deep inside the star had gone wrong, and it was burning too fast, too hot. The experts said humanity had maybe 50 years left. After that, Earth would become too hot for life. The oceans would boil. The air would burn. Everything humans had built over thousands of years would turn to ash. Every nation on Earth stopped fighting each other. Every scientist worked together. Every factory built rockets and ships. But the math was clear and cruel. Humans could not travel fast enough to reach other stars. They could not build ships big enough to save everyone. They were trapped, waiting to die. Captain Yuna stood on the bridge of her ship, the hope of Seoul, watching the stars through the window. She was 34 years old, with sharp eyes and steady hands. She had joined the United Earth Defense Force to protect her planet. Now she wondered what she was protecting it from. The enemy was the sun itself. "Captain," her officer said, his voice shaking, "we have contacts, unknown contacts, coming from beyond the solar system." Yuna felt her heart stop for a moment. In all of human history, they had never found proof of alien life. Now, at the end of everything, something was coming. The ships were beautiful. They were silver and smooth, shaped like tears falling through space. There were 3 of them, each one bigger than any human city. They moved without fire or engines, gliding through the void like fish through water. Yuna ordered her fleet to form a defensive line, but she knew it was pointless. Whatever these visitors were, they had technology beyond anything humans could imagine. If they wanted to destroy Earth, nothing could stop them. But they did not attack. Instead, a message came through every radio, every screen, every device on Earth. It was translated into every human language at the same time. "We are the Villani. We come in peace. We wish to help." The emergency meeting happened in Geneva, in the old United Nations building. Leaders from every country sat together, their faces pale with fear and hope. Yuna was there too, as the first human to see the alien ships. The Villani ambassador came alone. Its name was Auris, and it was not like anything humans had imagined aliens would look like. Auris was made of light. Soft, gentle light that shifted and flowed like water. When it spoke, the words seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We know your star is dying," Auris said. "We have watched your species for a long time. You are young. You are creative. You have so much potential. It would be a tragedy for you to end here." Admiral Taiho, an old soldier with gray hair and suspicious eyes, leaned forward. "What do you want from us? Nothing is free." Auris flickered, and somehow Yuna understood this was sadness. "You are right to be careful. But we want very little. Only a place to rest." The Villani told their story. They were ancient, older than human civilization by millions of years. Once, they had ruled 1,000 worlds. Their cities had touched the clouds of 100 planets. Their children had played in gardens that floated among the stars. Then the Hollow came. The Hollow were parasites. They did not just eat flesh. They ate minds, memories, souls. They consumed everything that made a person who they were. And they were hungry. So very hungry. The Villani had fought them for 10,000 years. They had lost. World after world fell. Billions died. Now only 3 ships remained. 400,000 Villani. The last of their kind. "We are dying," Auris admitted. "Not just from the Hollow. They infected us with a sickness. A poison in our very blood. Each generation is weaker than the last. In a few centuries, there will be no more Villani." The room was silent. Yuna felt tears on her cheeks and did not know when she had started crying. "We cannot save ourselves," Auris continued. "But we can save you. We will give you everything. Our technology, our medicine, our knowledge, you will be able to travel to other stars. You will be able to build new worlds. Your species will survive. Why? Yuna asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why help us? When you are suffering so much? Oris turned to her, and its light grew warm. Because we remember when we were young. We remember hope and dreams and the belief that tomorrow would be better. We have lost those things, but you still have them. Someone should carry the light forward. Let our final act be one of kindness. The deal was made that day. The Vellani gave humanity the stars. In return, they asked for a single world, a quiet planet where their remaining people could live in peace until the end came. Over the next months, human engineers worked with Vellani teachers. They learned to bend space, to travel faster than light. They learned to change dead worlds into living ones. They learned medicine that could heal almost any wound, cure almost any sickness. Yuna watched the first colony ship leave Earth. It carried 100,000 people toward a new home. Families held each other and cried with joy. Children laughed, not understanding how close they had come to extinction. On the bridge of her ship, Yuna made a promise. She did not say it out loud. She did not need to. She simply looked at the stars and swore that humanity would never forget what the Vellani had done. They had given everything expecting nothing. Yuna would make sure they received something anyway. 40 years had passed since the Vellani saved humanity. The universe had changed. Human ships now traveled between stars, like cars once traveled between cities. 12 colony worlds held billions of people. Factories floated in space, building more ships, more homes, more futures. Children grew up learning about Earth as a place their grandparents came from, a blue marble in a distant corner of the galaxy. Every ship had words carved into its hull. Remember the Vellani. Dr. Jisoo had dedicated her life to those words. She was 62 years old now, but Vellani medicine kept her body strong and her mind sharp. She could have lived another 100 years, maybe more. That was the gift the aliens had given. But Jisoo did not care about her own life. She cared about the beings who had made it possible. For 30 years, she had studied Vellani biology. She had begged for samples, for information, for anything that could help her understand them. The Vellani had been confused by her interest. Why would a human spend so much time studying a dying species? There was nothing to gain. Jisoo did not care about gaining anything. She cared about giving something back. Her laboratory was on the colony world of New Bizan. It was a beautiful planet with purple skies and silver oceans. Outside her window, human children played with Vellani young ones. The alien children glowed softly, like candles in the wind. They were so fragile, so weak, each generation dimmer than the last. "Doctor," her assistant said, entering the room. "The results are back." Jisoo took the tablet with trembling hands. She had run this test 1,000 times. She always hoped for a different answer. She never got one. The Hollow had done something terrible to the Vellani. They had not just killed them with teeth and claws. They had poisoned their very blood. The sickness was written into Vellani genes, passed from parent to child. It could not be removed. It could not be stopped. Every Vellani carried death inside them from the moment they were born. "They knew," Jisoo whispered. "Doctor?" Jisoo looked up, her eyes wet. When they came to Earth, they knew they were already dead. The sickness was inside them. They had no future. But they still gave us everything. They saved us when they had nothing left to save themselves. She stood up and walked to the window. Below, a Vellani child laughed, its light flickering with joy. In 20 years, that light would be dimmer. In 50, it might go out forever. "I will not accept this," Jisoo said. Her voice was quiet but hard as steel. "I refuse." The United Colonies Council met on Earth. in the old city of Geneva, where the first deal had been made. The building was a museum now, a reminder of the day humanity had been saved. Councilman Hyan stood before the assembled leaders, his young face serious. "Dr. Jisoo has confirmed what we feared," he said. "The Vellani are not dying of old age. They are dying of a plague created by the Hollow, a weapon designed to destroy them slowly, generation by generation." Murmurs filled the room. Many of the council members had grown up with Vellani friends. They had eaten meals together, played games together, shared stories together. The Vellani were not just saviors. They were family. "What can we do?" asked Councilwoman Sumi, her voice heavy with grief. "If the plague is in their genes, how can we fight it?" Hyan smiled. It was a strange expression, fierce and determined. "We learn. We grow. We become better than we are." He pressed a button, and images appeared on the screens around the room. Research facilities, medical ships, training academies. Thousands of people already working, already fighting against the impossible. "Project Sunrise," Hyan announced. 10,000 of our best researchers. Every resource we can spare. One goal: cure the Vellani plague. An older councilman shook his head. "The Vellani themselves say it cannot be done. They have accepted their fate. Why should we waste resources on a hopeless cause?" Hyan turned to face him, and his eyes burned with something that made the older man look away. "Because they saved us when we were hopeless. Because they gave us everything when they had nothing. Because this is what humans do. We do not accept death. We fight it. We rage against it. We find ways where none exist." He looked around the room, meeting every eye. "The Vellani gave us the stars. Now we will give them tomorrow. This is not charity. This is not duty. This is love. Pure and simple. We love them, and we will not let them fade away." The vote was unanimous. A new Vellani, the colony world given to the ancient species. Ambassador Oris watched the stars. Its light was so dim now, barely visible in the darkness. It had lived for 3,000 years. It would not live for many more. A human aide approached. "Ambassador, we have news from Earth." "What news?" "They have begun something called Project Sunrise. They say they will cure the plague." Oris flickered with surprise. "That is impossible. They know. They do not care." The ancient being was quiet for a long moment. Then, for the first time in centuries, it made a sound that might have been laughter. "Humans," it said softly. "What wonderful, stubborn, impossible creatures you are." In laboratories across 12 worlds, human scientists began the longest battle of their species' history. Not against an enemy that could be shot or bombed. Against death itself. They would not stop until they won. The warning came at midnight. Deep space sensors detected movement at the edge of explored space. 3 massive shapes, each one the size of a small moon, emerging from the darkness between stars. They moved slowly but with terrible purpose, like predators who knew their prey could not escape. The Hollow had found them. Admiral Dawn stood on the bridge of the Eternal Soul, flagship of the first human expeditionary fleet. He was 58 years old, with a face like carved stone and eyes that had seen too much death. His grandmother had been sick as a child, dying of a disease no human doctor could cure. Vellani medicine had saved her. Because of that medicine, Dohon existed. His children existed. His grandchildren existed. He owed the Vellani everything. "Show me," he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, displaying the enemy fleet. The Hollow ships were not beautiful like human or Vellani vessels. They were ugly things, masses of dark metal and organic tissue twisted together into shapes that hurt the eyes. They looked like wounds in space, holes where light went to die. 3 hive fleets, his tactical officer reported. Our best estimate is 2 billion individual hollow creatures. They will reach New Velani in 37 days. New Velani, the quiet world where the last of the ancient species lived. 400,000 beings of light who wanted nothing more than to fade away in peace. Darwin thought of the Velani children he had seen playing with human kids. He thought of their soft laughter, their gentle light. He thought of them being consumed by monsters, their minds eaten, their memories destroyed. Contact all fleets, he said. Tell them to prepare for war. On New Velani, Ambassador Oris called an emergency meeting with the human governor. Its light was dim and tired, flickering like a candle in the wind. You must not fight, Oris begged. The Hollow cannot be defeated. We tried for 10,000 years. We lost everything. Please, save your people. Evacuate. Let us run as we have always run. Governor Yunji was a small woman with kind eyes and iron will. She had been born on Earth, in a hospital that used Velani medical technology. Every day of her life was a gift from the species that stood before her. With respect, Ambassador, she said gently, no, you do not understand. The Hollow do not just kill. They consume. They take everything you are and make it nothing. Your memories, your loves, your hopes, all gone. Death would be mercy compared to what they do. Yunji reached out and took Oris's hand. The light felt warm against her skin. We understand perfectly. And our answer is still no. You are not alone anymore. You have us. And humans do not abandon family. 3 days later, the human fleets gathered at the Korath Nebula, a cloud of gas and dust that would hide their numbers from enemy sensors. Admiral Doan looked at the ships assembled before him. 800 warships from 12 colony worlds. Fighters and bombers and cruisers and battleships, all built with Velani technology but armed with human determination. Every ship had volunteers. Every soldier had chosen to be there. When the call for defenders went out, so many humans answered that they had to turn people away. Soldiers of humanity, Doan said, his voice broadcast to every ship. Today we face an enemy that has destroyed 1,000 civilizations. They believe they cannot be stopped. They believe the Velani are already dead. They believe we will run. He paused, and his voice grew hard. They are wrong. 40 years ago, the Velani found a dying species on a dying world. They did not have to help us. They had nothing to gain. But they gave us everything. Their technology, their medicine, their hope. They saved us when we could not save ourselves. Now it is our turn. Today we show the universe what humans do when someone hurts our family. Today we teach the Hollow that some debts cannot be measured in blood or treasure. Some debts are paid with the soul itself. He drew his sword, an old family weapon his grandmother had given him. For the Velani, for the light they gave us, for the future they made possible. We do not forget. We do not forgive. And we do not lose. The Battle of the Korath Nebula lasted 11 days. It was the largest battle in human history. Thousands of ships clashed in the darkness. Nuclear fire and energy beams painted the void in terrible colors. The Hollow swarms were endless, billions of creatures pouring from their hive ships like insects from a nest. But humans were stubborn. Humans were angry. And humans did not know how to give up. Lieutenant Minji was 23 years old. She flew a small fighter, barely larger than a car. On the 8th day of battle, her squadron received impossible orders. Destroy the command center of the 2nd High Fleet. This is a suicide mission, her wing commander said. No one will judge you if you refuse. Minji thought of her mother, who had been cured of cancer by Velani medicine. She thought of her father, who had traveled to 3 different stars because of Velani technology. She thought of the Villani children she had taught to play human games, their light dancing with joy. "I will go," she said. 47 pilots followed her. They flew through fire and death, through swarms of hollow creatures that tore ships apart with claws and teeth. One by one, her friends died around her, their ships exploding into brief flowers of flame. Minji was the last one left when she reached the command center. Her ship was damaged, her weapons nearly empty, but she had one bomb left. "For the light they gave us," she whispered, and flew straight into the heart of the monster. The explosion killed 100 million hollow. The second Hive fleet fell into chaos. The battle turned that day. When the last Hive ship burned, when the last hollow creature died, the survivors floated in the void and wept. They had won. They had paid a terrible price, but they had won. On New Villani, the Villani watched the news in silence. They saw human ships burning. They saw human soldiers dying. They saw an entire species throwing itself into fire to protect beings they barely knew. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the Villani wept. Their tears were made of light falling like stars, filling the sky with grief and gratitude, and something they had forgotten how to feel: hope. 22 years after Project Sunrise began, Dr. Jisoo finally stopped shaking. She sat in her laboratory on New Bizine, holding a small glass tube in her wrinkled hands. Inside the tube was a clear liquid that caught the light like morning dew. It looked like nothing special. It looked like water. But it was so much more than that. It was a miracle. Jisoo was 84 years old now. Villani medicine kept her alive, but she had pushed her body far beyond its limits. She had worked 18-hour days for 2 decades. She had missed her daughter's wedding, her grandchildren's births, her friends' funerals. She had given everything to one goal. And now, finally, she held that goal in her hands. The cure for the Villani plague. "Doctor," her assistant said softly, "are you sure it will work?" Jisoo laughed, and there were tears on her cheeks. 14 failed attempts. 3 colleagues who died at their desks because they refused to stop working. Thousands of researchers who gave years of their lives. She looked at the tube with something like worship. Yes, I am sure. The Hollow had been clever when they created the plague. They had woven it into the very fabric of Villani life. Every cell carried the poison. Every child was born weaker than their parents. It was not just a sickness. It was a curse designed to make extinction slow and painful. But the Hollow had made one mistake. They had never met humans. Human medicine was young compared to Villani knowledge. But humans had something the Villani did not. They refused to accept impossible. When they were told something could not be done, they simply tried harder. When they failed, they learned. When they lost, they got back up. Jisoo and her team had taken Villani biotechnology and human stubbornness and kind them into something new. The cure would not just stop the plague. It would reverse it. Every Villani who received it would grow stronger, brighter, more alive than they had been in generations. The announcement went out to every human world. Project Sunrise had succeeded. Ambassador Oris came to New Bizin on a cold winter morning. Its light was so dim now that humans could barely see it in daylight. It moved slowly, each step requiring effort. It was dying, and everyone knew it. "I do not understand," Oris said to Jisoo. "Why did you do this? We told you it was impossible. We told you to save your resources. We asked for nothing." Jisoo smiled. She took the ancient being's hand, feeling the warmth of fading light against her skin. "That is exactly why we did it. Because you asked for nothing. Because you saved us expecting nothing in return. Because kindness deserves kindness. But the cost was worth it." Jisoo's voice was firm. "You gave us the stars. You gave us tomorrow. What kind of species would we be if we just took those gifts and forgot about you? What would that say about humanity? Oris flickered with emotion, colors shifting through its form. We did not save you so you would feel obligated. We know. That makes it even more important. You were good to us when you had no reason to be. Now we want to be good to you. Not because we have to, because we want to. Councilman Hyan arrived that afternoon. He was an old man now, his hair white and his face lined with age. But his eyes still burned with the same fire they had held 40 years ago when he first proposed Project Sunrise. He knelt before Oris, his old knees protesting. Ambassador, I have waited decades for this moment. Please, let us give you back what was taken. Oris was silent for a long time. Its light pulsed slowly, thinking, remembering. It thought of its children, its grandchildren, all the generations that had grown weaker and dimmer. It thought of the friends it had watched fade away. It thought of the endless grief of being the last of a dying species. You truly believe this will work? It asked. We know it will, Jisoo said. We tested it 1,000 times. We made sure. We could not risk failing you. Oris made a sound that might have been laughter or tears. Humans. You impossible, wonderful, stubborn creatures. It looked at the injector in Jisoo's hands. Very well. I will trust you. The injection took only a moment. Jisoo pressed the device against Oris's form, and the cure flowed into the ancient being like water into dry earth. Nothing happened at first. Jisoo held her breath. Hyan gripped his cane so hard, his knuckles turned white. The room was silent except for the hum of medical equipment. Then Oris began to glow. It was subtle at first, just a slight brightening, but it grew stronger with each passing second. Colors that had faded returned. Light that had dimmed blazed back to life. Oris rose from its seat, standing tall for the first time in centuries. I feel... Oris stopped, its voice breaking. I feel young. Jisoo wept openly. Hyan fell to his knees and thanked every god he had ever heard of. Outside the laboratory, word spread faster than light. The cure worked. The Villani were saved. 6 months later, the first healthy Villani child in 300 years was born. Its light was bright and strong, burning like a small sun. Its parents held it and cried tears of joy, their own lights blazing with renewed life. The child was named Hyan, after the human who had refused to let a species die. On every human world, celebrations erupted. Not for human achievement, but for Villani survival. People danced in the streets, lit candles in windows, sent messages of joy across the stars. They had done the impossible. They had paid back a debt that could never truly be repaid. Dr. Jisoo died 2 years later, peacefully in her sleep. At her funeral, 10,000 Villani came to pay respects. They filled the sky with their light, turning night into day. She gave us eternity, Oris said over her grave. May she rest in the stars she helped us reach. Humanity had given back the gift of life. The Villani would never forget. 100 years had passed since the silver ships first descended on a dying Earth. The universe had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Humanity had spread to 100 worlds, their cities rising on planets that had been empty rock just decades before. The Villani had grown from 400,000 survivors to 12 million thriving souls, their light filling space stations and colony ships with warmth and color. And today, both species stood before the galaxy. The Galactic Assembly met on a space station at the center of known space. 1,000 species had sent representatives, beings of every shape and size and nature. Some were made of flesh. Some were made of metal. Some were made of things that had no name in any human language. They had come to see the 2 species that had become legend. Ambassador Oris stood at the center of the Great Hall. It was ancient beyond measure, but its light burned bright and strong. The cure had worked even better than anyone had hoped. Vellani were living longer, growing stronger, having more children than ever before in their history. The species that had accepted extinction now looked toward a future without end. "Thank you all for gathering," Horus said, its voice filling the vast chamber. "I know many of you have questions. You have heard stories about humanity. Some of you believe them. Some of you do not. Today, I will tell you the truth." The assembly grew quiet. Representatives from ancient civilizations leaned forward. Young species barely out of their first star systems watched with wide eyes. Everyone wanted to hear this story. 100 years ago, my people found a dying world. A young species called humans lived there. Their star was killing them, and they had no way to escape. They were afraid. They were desperate. They were doomed. Horus paused, letting the words sink in. We could have ignored them. We could have flown past and left them to their fate. We were dying ourselves. We had our own problems. Why should we care about strangers? But we did care. We gave them our technology, our medicine, our knowledge. We asked for nothing in return except a quiet place to wait for our own end. We thought we were being kind. We thought we were doing one last good deed before we faded away forever. The ancient being turned and looked at the human delegation. Captain Yuna's great-grandchildren sat in the front row, their faces proud. Dr. Jisu's family was there too, wearing medals that honored their ancestors' sacrifice. Admiral Dohan's descendants stood in military dress, representing the forces that had defended the Vellani against the Hollow. We did not know what we had done, Horus continued. We did not understand what we had started. We saved humans thinking they would remember us fondly when we were gone. Perhaps name a star after us. Perhaps tell stories about the kind aliens who helped them once. Horus made a sound that was almost a laugh. We were fools. Humanity did not just remember us. They refused to let us go. When they learned we were sick, they dedicated their best minds to finding a cure. We told them it was impossible. They ignored us. We told them to save their resources. They ignored us. We told them to accept reality. They laughed and worked harder. The assembly stirred. Many species had heard rumors of Project Sunrise, but few knew the full story. When our oldest enemy found us, when the Hollow came to finish what they had started 10,000 years ago, humanity did not run. They did not hide. They did not calculate the odds and decide we were not worth saving. Horus's light flared with emotion, colors swirling through its form. They flew into battle against monsters that had destroyed 1,000 civilizations. They fought and bled and died for beings they barely knew. Their young soldiers gave their lives so that our children could live. And then, after the blood had dried and the dead were buried, they went back to their laboratories. 22 years they worked. They failed again and again. They lost colleagues to exhaustion, to despair, to broken hearts. But they did not stop. They could not stop. Because they had decided that the Vellani would not die, and nothing in the universe could change their minds. The Great Hall was silent. Even the oldest representatives, beings who had seen empires rise and fall, were moved by the story. I stand here today because of humanity, Horus said. My species survives because of humanity. Our children laugh and play and dream of the future because of humanity. We asked for nothing, and they gave us everything. The ambassador turned to face the assembly fully, its light blazing like a newborn star. You have asked me many times, what are humans? Some of you call them dangerous. Some of you call them unpredictable. Some of you fear their passion, their stubbornness, their refusal to accept limits. I will tell you what humans are. They are the species that looked at a dying people and said no. They are the species that charged into darkness to protect strangers. They are the species that moved the very stars to repay a kindness they never owed. Oris looked directly at the human delegation. Jisu's great-granddaughter had tears running down her face. Yuna's descendants stood straighter, their chins lifted with pride. "Do not make enemies of humanity," Oris said, and there was warning in its voice. "Not because they are cruel, they are not. Not because they are mighty, though they are. Fear making enemies of humanity, because if you ever become their friend, if you ever show them kindness, if you ever help them when they are lost and afraid and alone, they will never forget. They will never stop trying to repay you. They will tear apart the laws of nature itself to give back what was given." The ancient being's voice softened, filled with love that spanned the century. "We gave them technology and medicine and hope. They gave us back our future. They gave us children who will never know the fear of fading. They gave us a reason to believe in tomorrow." Oris moved to stand beside the human delegation, its light mixing with their warmth. "Some debts cannot be measured. Some gifts cannot be repaid. But humanity tries anyway. That is what makes them special. That is what makes them terrifying. That is what makes them the best friends anyone could ever have." The ambassador raised a hand, and the humans rose to join it. Two species standing together as one. "We are Vellani and human. We are family. And we will face the future together, for as long as the stars burn." The Galactic Assembly erupted in applause. 1,000 species cheered for the two peoples who had shown what kindness could become. On the station's observation deck, a young Vellani child and a young human girl watched the celebration through a window. Their hands were clasped together. Light and flesh joined in friendship. "Will we always be friends?" the human girl asked. The Vellani child's light flickered with joy. "Forever," it said. "Forever and ever." Outside the window, the stars burned bright. And in that endless dark, two species that should never have met flew forward into a future neither could have imagined alone. All because one dying people chose kindness, and another refused to let that kindness go unanswered. Remember the Vellani. The human ships still say, "Remember the humans." The Vellani teach their children. And the galaxy learned that some stories do not end. Some stories keep growing, spreading light across the void, reminding everyone who hears them that hope is never foolish and kindness is never wasted. This was one of those stories. And it was only the beginning.